For a lot of people, building your own gaming PC can be a really daunting task, and with part shortages and just insane prices on a lot of PC components, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to build your own PC right now. But even buying a gaming PC can be a complicated task with so many different manufacturers, all the different components and features that a pre-built system might have. It's hard to really break it all down to find the best option for you. But when buying a gaming PC, the first thing that needs to be set in stone is the price you're looking at for your overall PC setup, which is mainly going to revolve around the PC itself and then a monitor. A lot of your other peripherals can be kind of swapped in and swapped out. Doesn't really matter what your main budget is. You could have a $1,500 system or a $500 PC and still use the same mouse, keyboard, headset, but your monitor is most likely going to change depending on what system you buy. And there's no point in buying a $1,500 computer only to have $100 left over for your mouse, your keyboard, your monitor, and everything else that goes into your gaming setup. And you also don't want to overspend on a PC if you're looking to save some money and let's say go with a 1080p 60Hz monitor and just waste all of the performance of a super high-end gaming PC because your monitor just can't keep up with your PC. So this means if you're looking at, let's say, a $1,000 computer, then you're probably trying to game at, let's say, 1080p and 60 to 120 FPS, depending on the games you're looking to play. And let's say you're looking at a $1,500 to $2,000 computer. You're probably going to look at maybe a few $100 monitor that's 1440p, which is 2K resolution, at maybe 144 FPS. And then if you're spending over that amount, then there's plenty of options, probably over $500 at 4K resolution and 240 to 360 Hertz if you look at some lower resolution displays. But once you have the price in mind, it's time to consider what manufacturers you might want to look at and what sellers you'd consider buying a PC from. And when it comes to a lot of the big OEMs or big manufacturers out there like Dell and HP, you're probably going to be getting a system that has a lot of proprietary components in there that can't be upgraded or repaired very easily by the user. So once your warranty kind of goes away, it's going to be extremely hard to repair that system or upgrade it down the line. And it's most likely going to have lower performance compared to similar systems from other manufacturers just due to the overall constraints of the cases that HP and Dell build, as well as some of the cooling components that they choose. So you're going to most likely have overheating of components and just lower performance from your system. But you're also most likely going to get really good customer support during that warranty period, and you're not going to have that many issues with a system from those manufacturers. So definitely don't count those guys out, especially if there's a big deal or big savings at a Dell or an HP on one of their gaming desktops. But because of the heavy limitations of a lot of those computers that you're going to get from those bigger OEMs, you're probably better off looking to buy a PC from a smaller manufacturer like NZXT, Build Redux, or Main Gear, or even just looking at Best Buy, Newegg, or Amazon for a system from, let's say, CyberPower PC or iBuyPower. The majority of those computers are going to be using pretty much all off-the-shelf components that any DIY builder could get their hands on, which means upgrading it down the line and repairing it once your warranty has expired is going to be a breeze and super simple to just be able to take a component from Amazon or Micro Center or Best Buy or whatever, buy the component, install it yourself, and have your system back up and running, or upgrade it to some newer, better components down the line. So now that we have an idea on what manufacturers you might want to look at buying a PC from, the next step is really looking at the components and the hardware that come in the different PCs and the different systems, and just comparing similar price systems from different manufacturers that still fit within your budget. So now let's take a look at an example of what the process might be for buying a system right around a $1,500 price point. So I went ahead and found a few different systems from NZXT, Build Redux, CyberPower PC via Best Buy, and then a Main Gear system as well. But let's start off with just kind of an overview of these different systems, and then we'll go through the comparison process in order to pick maybe the best PC for the money and the components that you can buy right around the $1,500 price point. So just starting off with the NZXT Starter Pro PC. So NZXT makes an awesome system with their BLD build service, and the Pro PC is pretty much targeted, like I mentioned, at right around a 1440p setup. So you're looking at 145 FPS in Fortnite, 80 FPS in GTA, 80 FPS in Warzone, and right around 60 FPS at 1440p in a game like Minecraft. So a lot of these manufacturers will give you an idea of how the system is going to perform, which should also give you an idea of what monitor or what peripherals you might want to look at if you're going to end up buying one of these PCs. So, of course, we can take a look at the tech specs of the different components that come in this system, and NZXT does a really good job of listing out all of the details of the system that you're going to be getting. But I'm not going to really go through those in detail now. We're going to take a look at that right after we kind of do a quick overview of these 4 different systems. So now if we jump over to Build Redux, it's a very similar setup when it comes to the PC. However, with Build Redux, you have a little bit more customization options from their main PC configurations. So with the NZXT Starter PC series, you pretty much are set up with 3 different options with little customization on those different options. You can, of course, build or have NZXT build you a completely custom PC with the different components that you might want. But with the Redux or Build Redux service, you get to customize some of the components within the system. So for this system, it normally started out with a GTX 1660, and I upgraded it to a 3060 Ti to get it right around the same budget of that $1,500, while still getting very similar components to the other systems we're going to look at. So you have the ability to upgrade your GPU, CPU, memory, storage, and your Windows configuration for the system. But overall, this is what our system looks like. Like I mentioned, you're getting pretty much all off-the-shelf hardware. You know exactly what motherboard, exactly what case, what cooler, the RAM, the CPU, the GPU, the storage, the fans, everything. So any one of these things, if they fail or you have an issue after the warranty period is ended, very easy to replace the parts in these systems. And now if you look at the CyberPower PC Gamer Extreme Desktop on Best Buy, it's a little bit more difficult to get detailed specs of a lot of the components in the system, so it might be hard to know exactly what GPU you're going to get or exactly what the storage manufacturer is, who makes the NVMe SSD, exactly what manufacturer's RAM is going to be in the system. That may be difficult to tell on a lot of these builds like the CyberPower PC or the iBuyPower on a Best Buy or an Amazon, but for the most part, you're going to be getting really good components. It's still going to be all off-the-shelf hardware, so you'd be able to upgrade it or replace it, whatever, down the line once your warranty period has ended. But overall, you get, again, a bunch of the components and the specifications of the system in the specs portion of the listing. So you have the ability to compare and contrast to the other systems we've already looked at. And we can do the same thing with the Main Gear Vibe PC. So this is the Vibe with an RTX 3060 Ti, and again, pretty much even easier this time, all of the components listed right under the PC itself, and very easy to just go through this, get all of your components, all of your specs, and compare to the other systems. And that's exactly what I ended up doing, was just going through and comparing all of these systems together. So here we go. Now we have the comparison of our 4 different systems. So we have the NZXT Starter Pro PC, the Build Redux, which is their good PC variant, the CyberPower PC Gamer Extreme, and the Main Gear Vibe. So looking first at the prices of all these different systems, all pretty much right around that $1,500. So we have $1,449 for the NZXT, $1,569 for the Build Redux, $1,499 for the CyberPower PC, and $1,699 for the Main Gear build. And now if we look at our main components, so the CPU and the GPU. GPU, they're all the same, NVIDIA RTX 3060 Ti, great build or great component for 1440p gaming. And then if we look at the CPUs, here's where we have some differences. So both the NZXT and the Build Redux system have an Intel i5 10400F 6-core, 12-thread CPU. And the main gear Vibe has an AMD Ryzen 5600X, which is also a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. So those three systems very much similar with the CPU and the GPU. But then we take a look at the CyberPower PC, and we see we have an Intel i7 11700F, which is an 8-core, 16-thread CPU from Intel. So you're going to get a little bit better performance from the CyberPower PC on the CPU side of things, maybe a few percent to 5% increase in a lot of different games, just with the bump in FPS from those extra cores and the faster cores on that CPU. Now, if we look at RAM and storage on these systems, so again, pretty much all of them 16 gigabytes, both 2x8 gigabyte setups, but we do see a difference in speed. So 3000 megahertz on the NZXT Starter Pro PC, 2666 on the Build Redux, 3000 on the CyberPower PC, and then 3600 megahertz on the main gear Vibe. So slightly faster memory on the main gear, but pretty much for the most part, we shouldn't see a crazy difference in performance based on those numbers, with them all having dual channel 2x8 gigabit sticks of memory. And then if we take a look at storage, again, some differences here. So we have a 1 terabyte NVMe in the NZXT, a 500 gig NVMe in the Build Redux, so we're losing some storage capacity on the Build Redux. And then we have 500 gig NVMe and a 1 terabyte SSD in both the CyberPower PC and the main gear Vibe. Now when it comes to the cases and cooling, so we have a pretty limited cooling based on the cases that are being used on the NZXT Starter Pro PC, the CyberPower PC, and the main gear Vibe. You can see pretty much all of them have a closed off front panel. Hard to get air into the case with those setups. And then the Build Redux has one of the better cases out there on a pre-built, pretty much an all mesh front from Cooler Master, plenty of air coming in to that system. And finally, if we take a look at one of the more important aspects of buying a PC versus building one, is the warranty. So both NZXT and Build Redux have a 2-year parts and labor warranty on their systems, while the CyberPower PC and main gear system only have a 1-year parts and labor warranty. So you get a little bit extra security and peace of mind with the NZXT and the Build Redux system. So now if we just go through a quick process of elimination, which systems just don't really make sense for the price? The main gear at $1,700 just doesn't really make a lot of sense based on the components that are in the system. The main gear Vibe at $1,700 doesn't make a whole lot of sense just based on the components that are in the system. It also has a limitation of only having a 500 watt power supply in that build. So there's just some limitations to that system that don't really make it worth the $1,700, but you are going to get a really well-built system with some awesome customization from main gear that you're just not going to get with the other builds. So again, it's really just going to come down to what your preferences are, what you like in the visualizations, just the different aspects of a case and a system overall. The main gear Vibe might be worth a couple extra $100 to you if you like the overall appeal and aesthetic of that system. Another system that just doesn't make a lot of sense and will probably eliminate is the Build Redux. So at $1,569, it's an extra $120 compared to the NZXT build, with pretty much the exact same specs, just with a worse storage configuration. So in that system, we are getting better cooling, but overall for an extra $120, are we really getting that much better cooling? Probably not, so we'll just eliminate that one. So now we're left with the CyberPower PC and the Starter Pro PC from NZXT. So for an extra $50 with the CyberPower PC, we get an extra 2 cores and 4 threads. We do get less SSD storage, but we do get a terabyte of HDD storage for a game library or whatever else you might want to put on that hard drive. But we do get 1 year less warranty with the CyberPower PC compared to the NZXT build. So very tough toss-up between these two builds. Very close in my mind. I might lean towards the NZXT, just saving $50. You could probably put that $50 towards a better monitor. But you might also want the extra cores if you're going to use this system, not just for gaming, but you also want to use it for creativity tasks or multitasking tasks that require a couple extra cores and a few extra threads that you get with the i7 11700F compared to the 10400. So overall, those kind of are a toss-up depending what you're really looking for. But So again, those are kind of a toss-up depending what you're really looking for in a system. But hopefully this kind of walkthrough and this process of elimination, going through the different systems at our budget, has been a helpful guide of how you might want to look at, if you're going to buy a new gaming PC or it's your first gaming PC, how you should go about the process of really narrowing down to one system that works best for you. So yeah, if you have any questions or comments about this, this process or what system you should be looking at a different price point, definitely leave any of that down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, if you liked it, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, turn on post notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.